Hi, and welcome to Planet Nola. This is the podcast where I talk to people in New Orleans that I think are cool or doing cool things. I'm Mary Jacobs, and next to me today is Carrie Moulder, the producer, the co-creator of Planet Nola. And this is our last episode of season 2. This is episode number 24. So we thought for the last episode of season 2, we would come on here and talk to y'all, just about the season and about the future and, about our projects and whatever we really wanted to. But we're really proud of, I'm really proud. Carrie can speak for herself. I'm really proud of these 2 seasons. And I feel like what I wanted to accomplish, I've already accomplished like in tenfold. And so it's so fun to just constantly be hitting more and more like awesome milestones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm super proud.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool thing to do. Podcasts are not super difficult to get into, right? There's a pretty low barrier for entry there once you figure out like what you need. There's some money into it, but I'm glad we did it. I'm glad you asked me to do it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I'm glad that you agreed to do it so fast. And it's interesting. It's like I kind of want to talk about the low barrier to entry thing too, because we're doing this as a hobby right now. Like
Correct. We
have an advertiser, but the advertiser is just my business, so we're not like directly making money off of that. But we just started a Patreon.
Correct.
But our setup is 2 box lights that were, I think, $40 for the pair. Carrie has a soundboard and mics, and that's probably the biggest upfront investment. But we've been filming all of our video on Carrie's phone. And then I use an editor that was $100 for the videos that we use on TikTok and Instagram. But I don't know what editor you're using. The bar for entry is still money, but considering how quality our podcast has been, I am so proud of us.
Yeah, so the mics and the soundboard I got from a mutual friend of ours, secondhand. He wasn't using it, and I was like, I'll give you X amount of dollars for your stuff. And got it from him. And then we did buy these mic stands because we realized like trying to hold them, and we weren't using tables. And
that was a fun troubleshooting for us.
So the mic stands were a good investment, but again, I think it was like $50 for both.
Right, yeah.
And then we pay for our website, we pay for the podcast hosting, but we pay for all of that up front. It's like a couple $100.
And you can also start a podcast and not do that.
Correct.
Like you can start a podcast with your phone and record you and your I actually sent Carrie a voice memo the other day, and it was just my partner and I talking into my phone. I recorded an entire punk album on an iPhone. You can definitely record your first podcast episode.
Yes, you can.
So if you love this podcast and it feels like a medium for you, do it. Do it small, do it big. And
it does feel like there's a lot of podcasts out there.
It does. Because there are a lot.
There's like, probably a million podcasts
so many
out
podcasts
there. But if you have something to say and you want to do this like we do kind of as a hobby, and you're, passionate about it, you should do it. Don't let that, the fact that you don't have mics and a soundboard stop you from doing that.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that's true. I'm all about the DIY. And if you got something to say it.
Yeah, because otherwise people tell you your story for you.
Yeah. Reminds me of Hamilton.
Oh.
Who tell your story. Actually, I shouldn't even.
I'm not a Hamilhead. I'm not that much of a Hamilhead.
I just made up Hamilhead, but it sounds like a thing.
Hamilton head.
Hamilhead.
Hamiltonite.
Oh my gosh.
Hamiltoner.
I want to talk about the season.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do like an overarching just conversation of our season. I'm going to pull up the order in which we had everybody because if we thought about it, we probably could remember it, but it'd be easier to just look at it. All right. Our first guest this season was
Donnie
Marie. Well, she interviewed me, but I loved that episode, number 1, because I got to be the guest, but number 2, because it's another episode where I just get to be with a good friend. And those are, kind of always my favorite because they're so easy.
Yep. Yeah.
She did good.
She was cute. Yeah, she did a good job.
And then we had Marcel Bolio of Louisiana Bra.
Yeah, she was super fun. Super smart, super fun. real laid back. I feel like on that episode we really got to know her, which I think was big for us, but also for her.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, that was like a big conversation for her of like, you know, she runs that Instagram and doesn't necessarily put herself out there, but like it's important for people to know the creators of the things that they appreciate.
I agree so much, and I think that she's kind of like owning that more and more.
Yeah,
because she has her Substack, and I know she's posting on there regularly.
Yeah, I enjoyed that episode for that fact of like just her humanity being present while still being very active and very funny.
Yeah, she's the best. Love you, Marcel.
Love you, Marcel.
Okay, next we had one of my faves, Kamari. Kamari was so funny.
He was such a hoot.
I could like literally, when I was like, I need to have Kamari on this podcast, we were just like standing outside of Bar Redux, I think, yeah. And he was telling me that Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. story. And I was like, I have to put this Bubba Gump Shrimp Company story all over the internet for people to like. Kamari should be telling this story like every day because everyone needs to know how funny it is. Like he just does such a good job weaving the web, you know.
I want to say what an impact that made on me. So my dad loves Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. My dad lives here now, but before when he lived in Houston, he would come here and that's one of the places that he would go eat. And so he was saying the other day about how much he missed Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, and my immediate response, not even thinking, was just like, Dad, they treated their people like shit.
Oh my God. Yeah, because you know now.
Yeah. And I was like, they were not good to their employees. And he was like, well, I still miss it. And I was like, well, then you be going there by yourself. But that was like because of Kamari and, you know, just how genuine he is.
Your experience with Bubba Gump Shrimp Company has forever been changed.
Yeah. Well, and then we had that whole conversation about the trivia thing of like, what's Jenny's favorite animal?
Oh my God.
And we were like, what's Jenny's favorite animal? And we're like, what is it? And he's like, it's a bird. And I was like, no.
It's so dark.
It's so dark.
That's
not her favorite animal. That's what she wanted to turn into because she was being abused at her home.
Oh my God. That story was wild. So I love the Kamari episode.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, he's such a good storyteller.
Such a good storyteller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This podcast has really reignited my love of storytelling, like in a really big way.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like storytelling is such a it's such a component of all the things, right? I think it's a component of comedy. It's a component of theater that doesn't get sort of highlighted enough. You know, we should have Amanda G on here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Amanda G, if you're listening, you'll definitely be on this podcast. Mm-hmm. I will say that because I've been in the comedy scene for a while, that when I book guests, of course I'm booking a lot of my friends, which is easy and great because they trust me and will do this thing for me as a favor. But I do try to not just isolate comedians or artists or whatever. I try to get as broad a stroke as I can. But I happen to know a lot of comedians. And they all do other things as well. So it's always been really fun to have them on and just talk about those things. But I do try to space them out. So all my comedian friends inevitably will be on this podcast at some point. But I try to be like really considerate about how I balance the acts.
I mean, we could have very easily made this just about
New Orleans comedy.
Yeah.
Oh, easily.
But I don't know that would do New Orleans justice.
Yeah, that's not my goal.
That's not
my
our
mission.
That's not our purpose here.
Yeah, that's not my goal. Yeah, exactly. Okay, then we had Bob Murrell, whose name I always struggle with.
Bob Murrell.
Morel. It's all the R's and L's.
I mean, again, comedian, but also like
activist.
Very active. Ran for office. Bob's such a very like kind, genuine person.
Yeah. I've gotten 2 people that have come up to me now in person to tell me that they liked Bob's episode.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah. Well, Bob's super smart, but explains it in a way where he's not like talking down to you. Right. He's like really understanding. And I think too, what I love most about Bob is that he was inspired to run for office because of his daughter. Like
so
he's
sweet.
He's not a person who like went to law school and always wanted to be a politician, right? He's always wanted to be in community with people and to work towards a common goal. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and run for office. And I wish more people like him would do that.
Yeah, definitely. And those are the kind of people that I want leading me.
Yeah, like
people
regular,
with a real passion for leadership.
This is going to take us on a little bit of a tangent, but I think is relevant here. I always want to explore this concept, and I think they do it in a couple of communities. I think I've seen it in like Latin American communities, where your position of leadership is designated by lottery.
That sounds like a nightmare.
But so you have to have certain qualifications to like get into the lottery,
okay,
right?
I could see that.
But it's like there's like no financial barrier or anything like that. But like you have to have certain qualifications to get into the lottery, and then they draw the lottery, and then you sit on the council for like 2 years, and then you see what happens.
That's
right?
Crazy.
Well, like. I mean,
you could wind up with some real nutties, though.
You could wind up with some real
nutties.
Buddies. You could wind up with some real nutties, but then you could also be like, cool, there are people that are on this, council that aren't using this as a stepping stone to some other political office or to make money or to give their friends money or whatever, right? I don't know. It's weird. It's like, I don't know. I want to write a book about it.
Write a book
like
about
it. Like I want to envision it and
like
make
a fiction book.
Yeah, fiction book.
I love that. Do it.
Well, with what time?
Do it. Do it all the time we both have. We have so much spare time. Okay, the next episode was Kendra Unique Wills.
Yeah, I like Kendra. Very sweet, very talented.
I think Kendra should legally change her name to Kendra Unique.
Maybe she has.
Or maybe Unique is her real middle name. Did we talk about this on the podcast?
No, we did not.
I love Kendra so much. I definitely she's somebody that every time I'm like in her presence, I'm just like, you're so much cooler than me. I just think she's like one of the most chill people on the planet. Like she's very talented and very chill about it, and very she's always been really giving. Like the fact that she was like so ready to just come be on this podcast, that is really indicative of like the kind of artist she is. Like she's always like, I'll help you build your garden for free.
Yes.
Things like that. Like that's so that is like who she is, and that is like her nature. And on top of being a very talented person, her perspective is so it's beautiful to hear how she sees the world, because there's not a lot of people like her.
Yeah, I am never not going to love a person who loves gardening.
Yeah, you love gardening.
You love gardening.
You love your little flowers.
Well, there's something about that, right? There's a lot of control over your life that you get when you do that. You take ownership of things and you grow it, and you then become responsible. And I mean, of course, the same thing can be said for having a pet or, birthing a human. But if your flowers die, it's okay. You can't go to jail.
It's true.
No one's sending you to jail.
Yes, it's not like a small child that you've neglected.
Right.
Yeah, you're like, I'll take my chances on this rose bed.
Yeah, I'll grow some cucumbers.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, she definitely embodies the spirit of gardening and why that is critical in the world.
A little garden fairy.
Garden fairy.
Yeah. Okay, next was Rusty Laser.
Oh, man.
I loved this one, too, because this is somebody that I'm just, a fan of. And I just randomly was like, okay. He was a fan of our podcast. I remember when he started following us and, interacting with my stuff, I was just like, oh, this is fun. And I've seen him around the city, at different things here and there. But, to reach out to him and then have him be like, yes, I'll come on. And then to have him come on and he's just, the coolest guy ever.
Yeah.
It was such a moment for me. I was like, oh, this is awesome. The fact that, somebody I really look up to is just I'll definitely come support your artistic endeavor. I get why all my friends do it, but when strangers do it, it's oh, incredible. The best feeling.
Yeah. We were talking about this before. When you said, "Oh, we're gonna do this episode," I was like, "Oh, cool! Can we talk about Rusty Laser?"
I know.
Because I was personally very inspired by hearing his thoughts about cultivating talent and being supportive to people in a way that is just, you can do the thing. Right. We had that whole conversation about mentoring and about how that's, I think, one of my coworkers today said, I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to use you as a mentor for like social media and what. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And it dawned on me in that moment about the difference between what Rusty was talking about and this like professional mentorship, right? Which is like, I have knowledge in a business sense,
right?
That can be passed on to a person that they could learn by, watching YouTube or reading articles or whatever, but to have person to like bounce these ideas off of in a professional sense, I think is nice, very important. And I was very honored that she came to me and asked me that.
That's so sweet, yeah.
But also, I also like just being supportive of people who are creating things, whether I know them or not. Like I just want to be like, I'm so glad that you birthed that thing.
Definitely.
I'm so happy to see you do it. And then also to be there when it's not going so great, being like, you can do this. You're capable of doing this. That feels like the right space. And, he called it doula. I mean, we could put lots of other labels on it.
For sure. That's what we were talking about in the episode, too.
Like, is this being a leader? Is this being a friend? Is this being a mentor? Is this being this? But, at the end of the day, it's just about believing in other people and then expressing that belief.
Definitely.
Right? Like being genuine in that belief and then saying it out loud so that they hear it.
Yeah, and then him coming on the podcast is him expressing that belief in us.
Yep.
Which is what feels so awesome. Good. Yeah, which feels so good.
So
like,
cool.
Oh, cool. You believe in me. Like, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. We're cool, y'all.
Yeah, we made it. It's fun because I'm always like, I've got all these cool people. And then I'm like, but if they keep associating with me, either they're messing up or I'm cool.
Well, I think the way that you live your life as a very like authentic human being is endearing to people. Yeah. Right? Like we'll talk about him in a minute, but our last guest who was just here, Sage Michael, he said, something about discerning spirits made it happen, right? There was something about your vibe and your connection to his values that discerning spirit.
Say discerning spirits. That man spoke in poetry.
But I think that's real, though. I think
Kamari might have made me cry. Didn't somebody else make me cry?
No, you made Kamari cry.
Oh, I made Kamari cry. That's what it was. But Sage Michael made me cry. So he's the first guest that made me cry. Yeah, I was like tearing up, man.
But I think that there's like a lot of truth to that, in that, you present yourself as a super authentic person, and you when you make these requests to people and you ask them to engage with our content and as guests on the show, you're coming from it from a very sincere place of like, I'm not doing this so that you'll like me. I am doing this so that you can share my joy.
Definitely. It's cool. It's great. I love it. I'm glad that this is the outlet that I've landed on after all these years of doing all kinds of things. Yeah. That like, this is where we're at.
And you said you were never going to do a podcast.
Well, that was the thing I did for a long time. I also said I would never do a YouTube channel, and now I'm about to do a YouTube channel for my business.
This is why you should never say you are not doing a thing.
It's true. I shouldn't. But to be fair, I did draw a line in the sand saying I don't like editing, and I've not had to edit anything yet, which is the real reason why I never wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's why Carrie's here, among many other reasons. I'm glad that we landed here, because it's like we were talking about it a minute ago too. We were like, oh, this is an oral history. This is so many things, and how we were talking about how it's made us appreciate storytelling more. Is like. There's a reason that storytelling feels so good to touch in with and tap in with. It's because it really connects you to each other, and that feels good. Yes. That feels good. To really hear people and to have them hear you feels good. But nobody wants to like live in that.
People don't want to be vulnerable, right? And then people don't want to decenter themselves.
Decentering yourself is a hard one.
Right? And so that's what storytelling does. When you're the storyteller, you have to be vulnerable, right? And when you're the listener, right, when you're the receiver of the story, you have to be really willing to decenter yourself so that you can make that connection.
Yes.
And then, afterwards you can make it, relatable and be like, oh, I really related to that person because my experience is XYZ, right?
Yeah.
But to get to that point, you have to decenter yourself in order to listen. I mean, I feel like if people listen to other people's stories more often, then then some of these like oppressive structures that exist around us, we could find ways to connect and pull those down.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I have this analogy about an elephant, but I'm not going to go into it.
I mean, it's up to you. If you want to go into your analogy about an elephant, you can always edit it out later.
I got this from one of my professors, as a diversity and social justice class, and she basically said, imagine that you're tiny aliens and you've come down to Earth, but you're itty bitty tiny aliens, and you've come down to Earth and you've landed on an elephant, but one part of your party has landed on the tail, right, or the rear end, right, where the tail is. And one part has landed on the face, right? And then another part has landed like on the side, right? Well, an elephant is so big and you're so far apart. Your experience of the elephant is going to be so different, right? The people that live on the butt, right? They're going to be like, this place is stinky.
Yeah.
There's always this thing that's swishing around us.
Yeah.
We're going to fall off the edge at any moment.
Yeah.
Right? The people who live on the front they're going to be like, oh man, we're constantly getting food, right? Because the elephant is like, and water, right? We're always getting water. We're always getting food, right? And so they feel like very blessed and appreciative, right? And the people on their side are like, man, there's just a big open space of nothing here, right? But they're all on an elephant, right? And so this is why it's important to listen to other people's perspective of the world. We all live on this planet, but we don't experience it the same way.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. So there's my elephant.
Well, thanks for sharing your elephant thing. The next guest we had was Terry Simon.
Love the segue.
I was supposed to say it before I forgot.
No. Oh man, love Terry. Love Terry.
Another person that's just like
real,
so smart and so real and so generous with their like energy for them to like come here and like give us all of that information. She just like yeah, she's so smart and so relatable, like kind of you were talking about Bob, like Bob can say things and you feel related to it and not spoken down to. Terry has that same ability where she's a teacher in that way.
Yeah, what I really appreciated about her, again, we're sort of learning from these people that are coming on our show. What I really learned from Terry was like, know your worth.
Definitely. Yeah. She
know
really
your worth and
yeah.
ask for it.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to ask for it. Know your worth and ask for it. Especially for people of color, right? Like, and it's easier said than done for sure. But yeah, I
talk about perspectives being valuable. Like her perspective, we are, we have a little bit of an age difference, but we both were raised in this city. We're in the same generation, and I would say that our worlds are probably pretty adjacent to each other. Like we know a lot of the same people. So, but I didn't know she existed until I read that article. And when I read that article, I was like, wow, this is somebody that I really want to talk to and know. And then to meet her and realize our lives are very parallel, but not at all the same. And the amount of knowledge that I gain just from meeting somebody like Terry, who's able to give me that perspective, is so. This podcast rules. Like we're gonna be so smart. Like by the time we're 50 episodes in, we'll be friggin' geniuses.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, I loved the Terry episode.
I also love her perspective of history and about how, that whole article in and of itself connecting, like modern day rap to whatever classical 18th piano century, concerto is so smart, and it speaks to the whole of our history.
It's also so enjoyable. It's somebody being like, hey, I really love all of these things and I want to teach you about them, and like it's just fun. Like she's also fun and playful in that way.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if you can draw connections on that level, right, with music, right, you can draw connections on other things, right, politics and social systems and all of those other things, right, to be able to explain to people this is this thing and this is just like this thing that came before.
Definitely.
All right.
The next episode was Laura Sanders.
Laura.
I love the Laura Sanders episode. It reminded me of the Mary Devon episode because it was just us talking like start to finish. Like I remember the second episode we ever recorded was Mary Devon, and it was just like when it was over, we were both just like, wow, we really just talked for an hour straight. And then Laura was the same thing. Like we can just sit down and talk. And afterwards she was like, I don't know, what did we even talk about? And I was like, it doesn't matter because it was authentic. Like it was our authentic conversation. And like for me, it's like it doesn't actually matter so much that we get into these like little details and corners of every experience. Like like I think people feel like they really have to talk about New Orleans sometimes. She didn't say this, but I think people really want to make sure they're shooing it in. I'm like, no, you're here. Kind of like how Sage Michael said, I am New Orleans. Like you're already there. Like you don't have to And so it was so fun for me to talk to her. And afterwards she was like, I'm not sure. I was like, no, I loved our episode.
Yeah, I think what I always appreciate about Laura is she's doing the thing, right? She's doing freelance. She's making connections.
That's what that episode was about.
Women, right?
That episode was about like how to be a creative freelancer and like keep on the track in a city like New Orleans where it's as someone who does the same thing, I will just take days off, evenings off, afternoons off, go have a little drinky drink, hit up a like it's so easy to be leisurely when you work for yourself. She spends so much time really like reflecting on that and like the work she does to like stay focused.
Right. And then sort of sharing her journey of it wasn't easy for her to learn that.
No,
right?
Yeah.
Of like, she talked about when she first started doing stand-up that she thought she had to do this and that. Mary Devon had the same sort of sentiments, right? Where when she first started doing stand-up that she felt like she had to do this and that and this and that. And now she is comfortable in the space that she is holding.
Yeah, and she's not like trying to be validated. She's trying to do the thing.
I will go on record right here, right now, on Planet Nola, that I think that Laura Sanders is one of the funniest people in New Orleans.
So funny. I agree. I co-sign.
Yeah. And that she comes to comedy with a very pure and open heart.
Definitely.
Right. That she's doing it because she really just loves it and can't do anything else.
Playful. She's playful. A lot of these people have this theme in common, like very playful people that are in touch with like fun and like what brings them joy. Carrie, let's take a little break before we finish this.
Okay, cool.
We'll be right back.
Bye.
Hello, it's your host, Mary Jacobs. I'm sitting here with my producer, Carrie Moulder, and we are so excited to be bringing you Planet Nola this episode and every episode. We really believe in this podcast and the work it's doing in New Orleans to build community, to reach out to people, and we really love what we do.
Yeah, we love our guests, we love our audience, our listeners, we love each other. It's just a big love fest.
So if you love this podcast and you believe in what we're doing, it would mean the world to us if you considered subscribing to our Patreon. We've just launched it. The lowest tier is $5, and we are just really trying to get this podcast to pay for itself a little bit, maybe support ourselves just a little bit more. We're both creative people who have a lot of projects, and this is a big one in our lives, and there is bonus content.
Yeah, it's really fun. It takes a deep dive into the episode, kind of circle back to some of the topics. They've been fun.
Yeah,
Super
we basically
fun.
record with the guests as soon as we're done their episode and do a more candid version of their podcast. It's shorter, but it's more self-effacing, and it feels like just real, you know?
It's BTS, behind the scenes.
It's the BTS. So if you want more Planet Nola content, you could subscribe to our Patreon and get it. It would mean so much to us. So, okay, we'll let you go back to your episode now, but please consider.
Thank you.
Bye. This episode of Planet Nola is brought to you by Vitality Community Fitness. Vitality is a functional training gym located in Metairie, Louisiana. And at Vitality, we focus on members as individuals. That's right. We don't lump people together. We don't assume that everybody has the same goals when they step into our gym. We also don't push things like body ideals or diet culture. We try to focus on the full person, and we try to give an experience that matches that. We've got incredible coaches. We've got an incredible community. And if you're looking for a place to call your new gym home, consider checking us out. We offer a 3 free class trial. That's right. Literally no commitment. You can try 3 of our classes in a week to see if our gym is for you, because ultimately we want people who want to be there. And if it sounds like this might be the space for you, please consider checking us out. You can go to vitalitycommunityfitness.com, click the contact button, and get started. Hi, and welcome back to Planet Nola. It's me and Carrie Moulder, the producer of Planet Nola. We've been talking about our season 1 guests. We left off on Laura Sanders, talked about her a little bit, and then our next guest was Jasmine Johnson.
Sweet Jasmine.
Jasmine Johnson. So Jasmine's another one of those conversations like the Dawn one. I mean, literally knew Jasmine and Dawn at the same exact time in my life, which was high school. So it's just so easy and fun to click in with my friends.
Yeah, I loved hearing y'all's antics, high school antics.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know, I might have said this to you then, or I might have said this on the bonus episode. I don't know.
You're like, you weren't bad.
Well, that's one thing.
That's what you kept telling us. On the bonus episode, Carrie kept being like, I want to clarify that y'all were not bad kids.
They were not bad kids. You were kids that were testing your boundaries. And, there are bad kids. Well, okay, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that there are bad kids, but there are kids who do worse things than the things that you all did.
Yeah.
You were mischievous. And I think part of that, is going to an all-girl school. Pretty boring, right? And you're only social. You're already so bonded with each other that you don't have to navigate and other types of relationships or friendships.
I'm so glad that those stories now will just live forever on a podcast.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Those are the stories that I just love telling. I love telling the stories from high school so much, and the only people you can really tell them with are people from high school.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy to have shared them with more people because they're my favorite stories. It was such a fun time.
Yeah. I I have high school stories, but I don't know. I find yours much more endearing and interesting. And
what I am now is what I was in high school.
Yeah.
So imagine unyielding, obnoxious teenage energy with who exactly I am right now. People think that I'm obnoxious now. People that knew me in high school and the ones that are still my friends are my ride or dies because they knew me at my most ridiculous. Truly. And that's why I'm still so close to them. And they still because I've chilled out. Talk about somebody chilling out.
Yeah. I'm a client of Jasmine's, and
yes,
so I've gotten to experience her skill and her service, which is amazing. And to see her and to hear those stories about her. At first I was a little bit surprised because I was like, oh, she doesn't seem like someone that would, quote unquote, make trouble. Right? But I think that it does kind of speak to who she is in terms of being someone that lives outside of rules and authority, and again wanting to live authentically and with purpose. And sometimes, most times, our educational system requires that you live inauthentically.
That is 150% the truth. And it can kind of beat you into submission, for lack of a better word, or you can be like Jasmine and I and just be willing to kind of flout it all for social cred and to be yourself, and because you're unafraid, and because you realize that a lot of times the rules in place are friggin' stupid.
Yeah.
And
they make no sense.
Truly make no sense.
They serve no purpose.
Except to like support some authority or hierarchy that I don't want to be a part of usually.
Yeah. And so I'm reading Your Body Is Not an Apology now. And the very beginning is, like, babies don't hate their bodies. In fact, they're fascinated by them, right? The babies are like, oh, look at my feet. Look at my toes, right? And then we always do this with babies of like, where's your nose? Where's your feet? As we're helping them learn. And then babies get into the educational system and they get exposed to mass media and we all hate ourselves.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
Right? We stop being amazed by our own bodies and abilities and knowledge because every turn we are being told that it's not good enough.
Yeah, what's expected of us.
It's not acceptable. It's not the norm. Right.
Yeah.
I love Jasmine
Me
for
too.
all of that.
Me too. The work she does is so important. After Jasmine, we have Lowell. Lowell is so funny, man. Like, Lowell was an interesting pick. Yeah. And I'm going to tell people why I picked Lowell. I picked Lowell because, number one, he's the oldest person that I've had on the podcast so far.
Yeah.
I really wanted to get somebody that represented a generation that I've not yet seen. It's important to me to, like, really be as diverse as possible with who I'm pulling on here. And inevitably, the bulk of my guests are in my generation, just because those are the people that I have the most immediate access to. But I am trying to make a serious effort to expand beyond just the millennials, essentially. And Lowell was one of those choices. I also picked him because he embodies this, like, laissez-faire, very, like, Southern man attitude. He's not from New Orleans, but he's got this bit of a caricature about him, but he also has his head screwed on really tight. He's got a lot of wisdom, and he's lived a lot of life, and his perspective is just, like, one that every time I hear it, I find it very endearing and special. He's somebody who's, like, 75 and, like, working to acknowledge his privilege, like, all the time. Yeah. Like, he really, I don't know how much of that's going to show in the episode, but, like, he's incredibly self-aware in that way.
Yes.
And his episode was exactly what I thought it was going to be, I just like Lowell telling his stories. And it's important for me to, like, document it,
Yeah. My favorite thing about Lowell is his turn of phrase when he said it was as dark as a pile of black cats. I was like, I have never heard anything more true in my entire life.
So funny. I decided that I'm gonna get the supercut of all of his turn of phrases and make that a reel for our Instagram. Good. Maybe it will exist by the time this comes out. I don't know. But he had, like, I was listening to that episode yesterday, and he had, like, within the first, like, 15 minutes, he had, like, 4 turn of phrases. And I'm like, okay, well, I can literally just cut all his funny little sayings. Yeah. He says some things that you're just like, what does that one even mean? He had one about angry tomcats, a hairless tomcat or something. He said, oh, I'm going to be as angry as a 2 bald tomcat or something like that. I was like, what?
If it was angry as a 1 bald tomcat, that makes sense.
I thought he said, like, 10 bald. I don't know what... I don't know.
Maybe it was no bald.
Maybe it was no bald. I don't know. It was really funny. He's got some good ones. Somebody needed to explain it to me, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but that dark as a pile of black cats. I will never. Yeah,
that was when he was telling us a story about how he looted after Katrina. This is the other thing about Lowell that I love is like we'll be just talking at the bar, and then all of a sudden I'll be listening to a story of him looting, and he won't ever like be like, well, when we looted after Katrina, like it'll just have come up so naturally.
Yeah, well, he doesn't call it that either,
no,
right?
It wasn't
yeah,
really.
Right,
it's
right.
just funny
yeah.
that's a huge traumatic story, and he just like tells it like it's any other story.
Yeah. That was really funny.
Which is an interesting perspective. We keep yawning because this is probably the latest we've ever recorded the podcast.
Yeah.
It's pretty late.
Did I yawn?
Yeah, and I yawned.
Okay, sorry.
It's, for us, it's 8:48. Like, come on now. We never record this late. We're really living life today.
Yeah.
Living
our best lives.
And then we had our final guest.
Yeah, Sage Michael.
Who just left. We actually just recorded with Sage Michael's episode. And it was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, I am so glad that he agreed to come on, because not knowing you and being like, we made this joke about it being some kind of like get out situation.
Yes.
Like, come to this white lady's house.
He was like, I rolled up, didn't have my machete. But yeah, we said this in the bonus episode that will come out with that episode, but he doesn't know me, and I really just was like, I've been following him and his activism for a minute, and I just was like, will this person even think for a second that they want to talk to me? Because I get turned down a lot. I really do. Or I get people that commit and then they flake. And like, honestly, I get it. I try to stop. Yeah, I try to stop bothering people after like a couple times. But sometimes I tell people, if you want me to stop asking you, you're gonna have to tell me, because I'll just keep asking people, because we haven't been able to finance this thing, which is about to change. You hear me? You hear me?
Yes.
Season 3, Planet Nola. This thing is about to pop off. Anyway, it's really a real roll of the dice of who will commit, and I get it, and I get when people can't commit. I just get it. It makes sense. So when a complete stranger committed to me to show up, it meant a lot. And for him to show up, lay down like a ton of history, a ton of just like context for us around Lincoln Beach, and like, what a smart and like giving person, you know?
Yeah, I love that he brought up Nord and how underutilized that resource is for the city. You know, the city really wants to start, as they always do, right? You know, the city is concerned about violence and youth violence in particular. And God, if you want to address that, fucking Nord.
Yeah, like
Nord.
What
Start
Sage Michael
there.
was saying is like, you take the football kids out kayaking on the weekends. Like, you have them do all the things. You make it this like interwoven system of support for these kids.
Yep. And it's not just about like quote unquote keeping them off the streets, right? Keeping them occupied, right? It's about teaching them skills beyond football, right? Like the way he framed that one is about teamwork, right? So he takes, he's like, I've got this football team and I want to teach them about teamwork. Well, I'll take them off the football field and put them in a situation that they've never been in before, like rowing, right? And it's so brilliant, right? Because that works.
Definitely.
Right? We know that works. Because that's where kids get their ability to regulate their emotions, to work through conflict.
Yeah.
They do it by interacting in spaces where they're unfamiliar.
Yep, definitely.
So
He's such a
I want to
smarty.
give him all the money for Nord. I want to give him all the money and support for Lincoln Beach. I want that to happen. I mean, all of New Orleans East needs support and investment.
Yeah.
In a way that the community wants to be invested in.
And it's really nice to have people like him lead.
Correct.
And put their voices out there and make space for the conversation, make the conversation happen.
Yeah. So just to clarify what I said, I'm not that I feel like I was misunderstood, but I want to like state this very plainly. I don't want people from outside New Orleans East to come in and invest in New Orleans East and develop it. I want the city to provide the people of New Orleans East the ability to develop their own community.
Yeah, I think that was clear. But yes, absolutely.
I know it was clear. I just wanted to.
You're like, I want to say it again.
I want to emphasize this because developers coming into spaces is the sort of the undercurrent of a lot of what we talk about on this podcast, right?
Yep.
Is transplants and the impact that they have on New Orleans and the people of New Orleans, and that you have to, if you're going to come in and make, quote unquote, make change, right? You have to do it in collaboration and in community with the people who already live here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's what
we're going on and on about, okay? And that leads us up to this episode, okay? And I want to say some things to the people listening.
Okay, say it.
If you're a fan of this podcast, seriously, thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Like I was telling Carrie, and what I was saying earlier is, like, there's like, at this point, like 70 or 80 people that listen in the first week, and that's a pretty good number. And technically, we're in the top 25% of podcasts. But I think that's because a lot of people don't follow through with their podcasts or post consistently, and we post really consistently, and I'm really proud of that. So if you're a fan of this podcast, thank you so friggin' much. I have a request to make of you. It's that you interact with the podcast a little bit more, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook or our Patreon.
Or YouTube.
Leave a comment or leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. I'm asking you to interact, number one, because it does help our, discoverability, but also my ego. When people comment on the things like the reels and stuff, I'm drooling to respond. I'm like, yes, someone's engaging with this thing that I care so much about.
Yeah.
So I just want people to interact with us more.
Well, and we want to hear your thoughts. We also want to hear, what do you want to talk about?
Definitely.
Right? Maybe you don't have a guest in mind that you can recommend, but what's the thing about New Orleans that you think deserves a spotlight?
Definitely. And what was your favorite episode and why?
Yeah.
Because if you can tell me why you really enjoyed something the podcast gave you, it's going to help me find more of that, and expand on that. Because as the fans of the podcast, y'all can see it from a different place than us, right? We know what we love about it. But I'm always really curious for their perspectives. And because it's a podcast, which I'm not used to, it's just really us screaming into a void. I'm used to standing on a stage, saying a funny thing, the audience immediately laughing, and me immediately knowing I have done good. But my brain doesn't get to do that with a podcast. So put it on the internet, and maybe some people hear it, maybe somebody sees it. I don't know. Give me a little bit of validation.
I mean, I laugh sometimes.
You do,
but I can't laugh.
You really keep it tight.
I'm very fully understanding.
I do look at you a lot. If anyone watches the videos, they'll see me looking at you a lot. Because I'm always using you as my gauge.
And you'll see
an audience.
Yeah, and hopefully I seem engaged all the time.
You always do. You always, honestly, it's like you're performing right there with me, Carrie. You always seem really engaged.
I'm not performing. I'm receiving.
Okay,
I'm
receiving.
I'm receiving, and that's the way I like. That's what I hope that you out there in listener land and watcher land are doing, that you're receiving this information, and then maybe acting on it a little bit.
Yeah, that's the ultimate dream. The ultimate dream is that y'all are listening and it's informing your decisions all the time. Where to spend your money, who to vote for, whose stories that you want to push to the front. My hope is that it influences you in some really big, important ways.
Yeah. And if you know anyone out there that wants to give us $10 million so we can actually fund all of these incredible ideas that our people come up with.
Yeah, definitely. We'll take their money.
We'll take your money.
Well, I'm going to try to, I've been meaning to work on a sponsorship packet. So if you are somebody who has a small business or something, I want there to be a sponsorship packet that's pretty accessible, but also helps us get stuff moving. So that could be a thing that's coming up in the front of, for the future of Planet Nola. Always going to book more guests. There's going to be another season. Season 3 is going to happen.
What do you hope for season 3?
What do I hope for season 3? Great question, Carrie. I hope, and I mean, I keep talking about money because it's super important. This is a hobby that takes up the amount of time a small job does, like a part-time job. So yeah, I would like it to be more financially stable, but I also would really like it to, I like when I get to talk to people that I don't know. And that's becoming more and more possible because I've been doing it longer, and I'm meeting more and more people who can connect me to other people. But I think resources are what's going to help that the most. I think I'm going to be able to secure the really interesting guests the more I'm going to be able to.
And paying people for
that's
their
what I mean,
time.
resources. I mean money. I'm just trying to not keep saying money. But the frustrating thing about it is that, like, as an artist, like, I'm not supposed to talk about money. I'm supposed to just create art and, like, be grateful that people are consuming it, when in fact, like, I think what I do is, like, incredibly valuable, and, like, I've never been compensated for it, which I don't just mean this podcast. I mean, like, the plays I've written and the comedy. Like, I think all of us should be, we're providing a service, you know? And so I know it sometimes feels tacky to talk about it, but I don't care, because unfortunately we're living in this capitalistic system which requires me to be able to make money and play the game.
Right.
And so art takes up a lot of time that I would otherwise be using to make friggin' money.
Right.
So it's like, can't this translate?
Well, and I think too, it's not just about you and I making money. It's about us being able to share that with the guests.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. That's,
you know,
absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I want to be able to pay people and pay myself.
Correct.
Both are true. Both are true.
Yes. And you can do that, right? You know,
soon. Season 3.
Bum, bum, bum.
Season 3. This is going to be the most financially viable podcast in the GNO. Move over, Poppy Tucker.
Wait, Poppy Tucker.
Tucker. I don't know.
Tucker.
This doesn't sound like a real name, though.
And she is. She's a real lady.
I know she is, Carrie, but you're going to tell me that name sounds like a real name and not a made-up storybook name?
It could be.
It is a real name, but it sounds like it's a small...
I mean, Poppy is for sure...
a wooden nymph. Like a forest nymph.
We know someone whose daughter's name is Poppy.
I do know it. But that makes sense for a baby.
Yeah, but you can be an older... person named Poppy.
You can be. I'm not
it's
saying...
the Tucker Poppy.
The Tucker... It's the combination of the Poppy and the Tucker that make it sound unimaginable, like kind of like fantasy to me.
Yeah.
No, I love the name Poppy. I think it's a cute name.
Yeah.
Poppy Tucker, if you're listening...
We'll have you on this podcast.
No, I won't. You have a big enough platform. honestly, if this podcast ever, this is a real thing. I don't ever want somebody like Poppy Tucker on this, or Tucker on this. They have so many outlets in their voices. Their voice, her voice has been out so much. We have consumed so much of her perspective and her and it's not to say that she's not valuable. It's just to say you're good, girl. I could get somebody else.
Fair.
You know, I could get somebody else who needs to be heard or should be heard.
Well, and I think too, we want something that isn't part of the mass production of content.
Exactly.
Right. I was talking to some folks today about when I was my freshman year in college, I wanted to be an urban folklorist. I was like, oh man, I'm really into folklore. I'm really into fairy tales. I'm going to be, and I was really into urban legends, right? And how they developed and I was like, oh man, I really want to be an urban folklorist. And my mom was like, what the fuck?
She was like, you made up a job. That's great. Good for you,
She was
Carrie.
like, do they make any money? But here's the thing. If I were a freshman in college right now and I wanted to be an urban folklorist, I could 100% do it because of TikTok, because of Instagram, because of podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to put this out there. If you know an urban folklorist in New Orleans, I want that person on our podcast.
Yeah, that'd be a cool one.
Uh-huh.
I would have to do a lot of research.
No, well, they could bring they could bring it. But if you know anybody that's an urban folklorist in the city of New Orleans, I want to hear about it.
That's another thing we should talk about before we sign off here. I'm always looking for guests. People hit me up and ask to be a guest, which I appreciate. I'll tell you what I look for when I look for guests. I feel like it's pretty obvious.
Hit it.
It's pretty obvious. I don't really want anyone that's promoting anything. So I'm happy to talk to other small business owners and people that have, maybe a show or something coming up. but the conversation isn't like a book tour, right? The idea
Correct.
is that the conversation is a conversation that serves a greater purpose. So I'm looking for people that want to have a bigger conversation, maybe not just do some self-promotion, if that makes sense. I'm looking for people with diverse viewpoints, folks, like I was saying earlier, like of different generations, of different socioeconomic classes,
different experiences.
So I really do try to prioritize as many different voices as possible, but at the end of the day, I only choose 12 people a season, and there are a lot of people in this city, so I'm slowly working my way through like all the wild and interesting people, and a lot of it is just scheduling. The way that I book this thing is like completely manic, and just I honestly, like, it's wild that people even make it here at the end of the day because of the way I book things. But yeah, I want to keep having people on. I want to, as long as Carrie will do this podcast with me, I will keep doing it because we'll always make it work. Whatever version we want to make work, I know we will do it. So I'm so excited about how the season went. I feel so good about it.
Yeah, me too. Me too, buddy.
Do you have any closing statements that you want to give the people?
Oh man, all I can think about is an urban folklorist. I'm just like, I really want that. No, I mean, I'm very grateful to the folks that have supported us in so many different ways, and really just want to hear what folks think about this, and give us suggestions for people to talk to, and help us learn about New Orleans to be able to share that with the broader world, because there are people that don't live in New Orleans that listen to this podcast. Because they might be from here, or they lived here for a while, or they're fans of like Sexy Ducks in the Fresh, right?
I have friends from college that listen.
And I think that that's the thing about New Orleans, is that it is so critical to this country as a whole in terms of being a cultural space. And we don't always treat it that way. Like, we don't always treat it like the gift that it is to this country. We get crapped on by a lot of people. And so, yeah, just tell your friends, tell your people,
share the podcast, tell people. And seriously, if you're somebody that really, really loves this and you can afford to throw us $5 a month, $10, $15 over at Patreon, every level gets the same perks. And we've been releasing a bonus episode every week of the podcast, so you'll have access to all of the bonus episodes as soon as you subscribe. I'm in the process of trying to figure out what the bonus content is going to look like in our season break. I do still want to offer some bonus content. Some of it's going to be probably some more casual pickup conversations. I sent Carrie a recording of Kristen and I talking about this interaction we had with a transplant a few weeks ago. Or actually not a few weeks ago, this weekend. But just little conversations. Might do some audio recordings here and there. I might do some writing. I'm also a writer, so I might do some writing posted up on Patreon. I'm going to make sure that there's some bonus content up there while we're in the season break. So seriously, if you think you can swing the Patreon, we would really appreciate it. I think we're up to 8 or 9 people right now. And it tickles me every time I get a little Patreon alert. I text Carrie. I remember the first one I got when it was someone we didn't know. It's like, it really means a lot to us. To have your support in that way. It makes all the difference. Like, it really, we got ourselves dinner tonight, so that was really fun. Like, we're celebrating over here, having people that believe in us and finishing another season. And I'm so grateful to you. Thanks for making it happen. Y'all, thank you. This has been season 2 of Planet Nola. We will be back as soon as possible for season 3. I can't wait, and be in touch. Thank you again to this episode's guest. Planet Nola is produced by Carrie Moulder and Mary Jacobs. If you liked what you heard here, please consider subscribing to us on YouTube or all your social media platforms, and pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. Also, if you really, really liked this episode, think about subscribing to our Patreon, where we have tons of bonus content from this episode and more. Starts at just $5 a month, and it would mean the world to us. Thanks so much, y'all, and be in touch.